Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the greatest region in North America. It's North America. We're here at WCS Challenger, and we're getting ready to move into that third match. My name is Fear Dragon, and I'm joined by Zombie Grub. How's it going?
We're from the greatest region in North America.
North America?
North America.
North America.
Yep, that's where
All
we're from. That's why we're here.
That's true. That is probably the reason why we're here.
Because we're North American casters?
Yeah.
Actually, that is 100% why we're here.
Suck
Friday
it,
was a
Todd.
fluke.
Suck it, Todd. Suck it, Claris. All right, we're hopping into Antis versus Silky for our next match. Now, this is going to be kind of funny because, again, I think that Silky had a bit of a rough run into Star Killer in that last series.
Yeah.
Because it was not macro games. It was just straight up Silky getting bopped by cheese after cheese. And then Neeb kind of rolling all over Antis, but that's just what Neeb does. So I think that this could actually be a pretty fun series.
Well, I think it'll be fun, but it is kind of that question of like, all right, so Silky was the guy that took Neeb down last season, which was odd. But like, you know, he loses to Star Killer, so is it like the order of operations things, or now Star Killer has a better chance against Neeb? I personally don't think so.
I don't.
That was a
think so.
hypothetical. I don't actually think it's true.
You know what? I will say, I don't want to say that I think that Starkiller has a better chance versus Neeb, as this is kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because we, of course, got Antis versus Silky. But since I'm not going to be on the desk for that series, I want to say, I do think that Neeb has always been that player that says, you know, I think I can cut these corners.
Yeah, sure.
Starkiller's the player that just goes full NA. Like, there is a little NA, and then there's full NA. And the only player that's more NA than Starkiller is maybe like True or something. So I could see him,
you know,
just sneaking some cheeky one in on Neeb.
I hate to burst your bubble, Fear Dragon, but I'm pretty sure going full NA doesn't mean cheesing. It means throwing a one game.
No, it definitely means cheesing.
No, I don't think so.
Like, no regret goes full NA.
Does
where he all-ins, and then when that fails, he all-ins a second and third time, and then finally his opponents are like, all right, he's done all-inning, I'm going to start droning, and that's when he wins.
That's not what we call NA. That's what you call the Mona Lisa of cheese.
Designated pressure, you mean?
Yes, sorry, designated pressure.
All right. Well, we're going to be starting up here in the top left-hand corner of Acid Plant, top of the blue Zerg player. He is Psystorm Gaming Silky.
And Neeb Slayer does it once, and that's his title. In the bottom right, as the red Zerg, he is Antis. The really cool name.
It's so funny how you have North America this year. It was less the case last year, but this year it's like you beat Neeb. Wow, you made a name for yourself. And in Europe, it's like, wow, you took a game off of Cyril. You made a name for yourself.
Yeah. Well, Cyril does this tricky thing where he actually stays in his country most of the time. So that's one of the differences.
You know, that was the downfall of Neeb, is that he just kept traveling. That was the problem. I don't think it was. I don't think it was.
I don't know if he keeps traveling. He just kind of goes back and forth, back and forth. But anyways, all right, so these two guys, as you said, not to jump ahead of ourselves, you're not even casting Neeb, all right?
Yeah, okay. You know what? Let's talk about Antis for a moment, because again, I don't think that we got to see the best performance out of Antis, but he has had actually a pretty awesome run through multiple of the qualifiers. He was at WCS Austin, where he was able to beat a lot of the kind of mainstay, like, I would say mid-tier NA players. He was even in the qualifiers able to beat Starkiller. He was able to beat awesome, really, really solid Protoss players like Estrella, etc. I think Antis is actually a pretty decent player, but he's still sort of coming up in this, and he's still sort of proving himself.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly why he's here, is that he did well enough, and now it's time to prove yourself in a group, something that you can prepare for, something that actually just to play, like, you know, multiple best of threes. And going up against Silky, well, I feel like this is a tall order. We didn't get to see, and as ZvZ, as you said, you said he took out Starkiller on his way here. Yeah, so I mean, that's a good sign. If you were to believe again in like that whole like order of things, like, well, so he lost to Starkiller, but he just beat Starkiller. But the point is, like, ZvZ might actually be a bit cleaner than his PvZ. I mean, going up against Neeb, that sucks. That makes everyone look bad. Well, not not everyone, but like a lot of people look bad. So maybe you don't look like you know what you're doing. Maybe you're feeding too much into the fear, like, oh, this guy's so much better than me. But then you go and you face Silky, who, yeah, did take down Neeb once, but maybe you face more commonly on that ladder. Maybe you know how to actually play the ZvZ to him, or just in general a bit better And usually we see who is better at ZvZ with this stage of the game, the Baneling Wars, if they even happen. We actually have an Evolution Shipper already on the way for Antis, so he might be kind of skimming on those Lings, starting that +1 faster for his Roaches, in which case I wouldn't mind, as neither player is really getting a lot of Lings, just enough.
Yep, a little bit of pressure there from Antis over at that third base. He also ran a Ling straight into the main base of Silky and got a pretty decent scout out and saw, okay, not a whole lot of craziness happening. You got 2 drones on gas. You're clearly not really trying to flood out gas income right now, even though there is now also a second gas geyser finishing up the natural. But all in all, nothing too crazy from either side.
No, actually I mean, we got like 4 hours of this, so I'm ready for like 2 more Fear Dragon.
Do you really think it's going to be 2 more hours for 2 series? Of ZvZ?
Well, I mean, oh, yeah, 2 ZvZ series. Yeah. Well, I did include the PvZ that's mixed in.
That's fair, that's fair.
That's my bad, but no, I think that this will go into a macro game, so it may be 2 hours. It'll certainly be a little bit longer than if anyone had actually cheesed. Both going for layers and Roach Horns, right? So no tricky cancel +1 once it's scouted type thing, and yeah, Roach to Roach. I mean, we saw Snoot kind of. He really pushed hard on the Roach Ravager thing, you know? Like, he really liked staying on that and trying to just overwhelm his opponent. How do these guys play? I mean, is one person favored more towards Sunling Claws? Are we going to see more Spire play? A little bit more odd than I see.
You know, it's sort of funny because the only way that you can really describe Silky is he's a very well-rounded player, and he plays a lot in Korea. And the kind of funny thing is, Antis, I don't think that I've seen enough of his play to really make judgments on, oh, these are stylistically his preferences. But the funny thing is, neither has Silky. Silky plays on Korea. Antis is like a true North American ladder hero. So Silky doesn't really have any idea of what kind of player Antis is.
Well, that's, I mean, that could be a problem, but...
Okay, he's going to be able to cancel both of these Banelings. That's good.
Yep, not too big of a deal there. I guess this first game is going to be a test for both players, and they are certainly trying to keep tabs on each other with the scouting that's going on here. Already onto a second evolution chamber, so that's actually pretty perfectly timed for starting 2-1 with the Carapace. 4th base to 4th base, I mean mirrored to the positions as well. Oh boy.
Yeah, a very even game so far, which I think is kind of nice to see, given we've seen a lot of the games today that have been a bit more one-sided, and then it feels like someone makes a big mistake or something, and then the game gets brought back to an even situation or something along those lines. But it's kind of nice to just see very safe openings from both sides, and now we end up seeing Silky adding on that Spire.
I feel like, you know, for the Europeans that we got to see, especially, I think they were all like macro. Okay, so it's scouted. But they were all like, you know, in my mind, well, it's definitely Snoot and Namsha were macro, and they can just get by on their Roach play. And you know, Europe maybe not as fond as the weird Spire timings. But NA, this is where I expect to see the Spire into the Spire cancel, into the faster Hydralisk Den. Maybe he goes for very, very, very quick Lurkers, something that Antis would not be expecting since his Overseer did just die and did not get to re-scout the Spire.
Okay, is he gonna be able to react appropriately? He's got a handful of these Ravagers out, and looks like he may, okay, he's just gonna go Overlord hunting for now. Now, doesn't seem like he's moving out with the rest of his Roaches. No, he's... Maybe? No?
Maybe.
Yes?
No.
Yes?
Yeah.
All right. All right. He's going to start maybe taking out the rocks and putting some pressure on then.
Well, if he's, I mean, he's thinking that it's Spire play, right? So this would be a nice time to hit while that Spire is just finishing up, so they're not even going to have the mutas out to help you quite yet. But, you know, we kind of saw that, we actually saw that on the European side with Snoot, and it was just, you know, he made Roaches anyways, which is the case here, but especially because Silky actually isn't going for a Spire.
Okay, there are some Overlords finally starting up now. Never mind. For a moment, I thought Silky didn't have any Overlords on the way.
He is. That's a bad supply block. You know, you're building. You're done with the drones. You're building the supply-heavy Roaches. You're not supposed to get supply blocked, or even close to supply blocked. So that does hurt. I don't. That seemed like a little too bold right there. I think Silky was maybe trying to put on some fake pressure, just kind of like give the scary face, but actually he wants to get to those Lurkers, and he just poked the bear, man.
All right, 2-1 upgrades are about to finish up, but it's finishing up for both of these players, so it's not going to play that huge of an impact right now, and Antis is looking
just go for it.
Hugely up right now.
Yeah, just go for it. I really feel like Silky wanted to try and, you know, be like, oh, I'm totally scary, like, trust me, mutas are on the way, and then Antis was like, well, that's just not a very big army.
Oh my god.
Let me just kill you right here, right now.
Silky is just getting rolled now.
He is. That's it.
Antis Going up in game number 1 for this best of 3, and it's just a best of 3. He's just one more game, and Silky is out of WCS Challenger.
Did Silky, like, did he just, like, play too much into his own mind game or something? Like, that was just...
I'm not sure.
I mean, we know why he didn't have as many roaches.
Yeah.
He was going to Hydras and Lurkers, and he was saving money to do so. So in a way, similar to what you would do for the Spire. But then he pushed into the army, and I feel like he just actually was like, here, look how few roaches I have. Look at it. And then what else was Antis supposed to do? I mean, if Antis, that was a bit of a test there for Antis, I feel. Because you see a lot of players, especially when they're first coming up, they won't have that sense, the bloodthirst, right? And there's another world where like Antis isn't quite there yet. And he just goes, oh, okay, that was an army. Let me just sit back and do nothing.
For all he knows, there's a force of those roaches, and there's maybe like 10, 15 more roaches or something on the far south side of the map, and they're ready to go for a counterattack or something. So maybe Silky's trying to sell a story like that. Like, hey, I only have roaches. I don't even have ravagers in this army. Like, I've clearly invested my resources somewhere else. Maybe it's more roaches somewhere else. Like,
And Antis could have just stayed around and been like, I'm scared, but instead he was like, well, this seems like a golden opportunity. And he was absolutely right. That looked easy because it was just a simple numbers game, but it shouldn't have been. Silky should have maybe been, well, he should have stayed defensive. I think we can agree on that. Taking the defensive high ground with the concave, and then maybe you can buy time for lurkers. But even with that in mind, I mean, say he didn't show Antis, like, look how small my army is. I mean, maybe Antis still pushes out eventually. Yeah. He still isn't quite to lurkers. I mean, his Hydras were, like, making as the game ended. Like, they just popped. So that's still a long time for actually as lurkers. That's still that deficit.
It is a very long time to try and sell that story.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, in a weird way, even though he canceled the Spire, he still did what we would expect from, like, a Spire player, right? He banked minerals, he banked gas. He said, please don't kill me, sir. And, well, the opposing player just did kill you, so rip.
All right, well, with that being said, Silky in a very, very rough spot right now, and kind of surprising to see from a player that was doing so well. And I actually had a lot of really high expectations for. He actually had a pretty decent performance even at the recent LAN event Cheesadelphia, which is primarily attended by like a lot of these North American players. So I really did have high expectations for Silky, not just to me, Silky was one of the players that I thought there's no way he doesn't make it out of this group.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Starkiller is kind of known for that style that he did just beat Silky with. So that was always like the question in my mind. But then Antis is here trying to prove himself, and he's getting the gold opportunity to do so. Taking down Silky already and making it look really, really easy. Now we're getting into Lost and Found.
All right, man, what a crazy world. We could even end up seeing a situation where maybe Neeb still beats Starkiller, but then it could be Antis versus Starkiller. And Antis has beaten Starkiller before in the qualifiers. He could actually make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, suddenly, I mean, the guy that really no one knows that well is the guy that gets through with Neeb. Dang.
Wow. Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Starting down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, we have our blue Zerg player from Psystorm Gaming. He is Silky. His name may be Silky, but he's looking a little rough this series.
Ha, I get it. Silk is smooth, just like your joke. Aww. In the top right, as the red Zerg, up 1, he is Antis. First time qualified, and with the scenario we just laid out, could actually advance on. That would be... I mean, I don't want to say it's unheard of because I actually have not kept track of like the bottom 16 players, but that would be impressive in my mind.
You know what is actually so cool to me about Antis is that you have players that people talk about coming up in the scene, Clem and Raynor and Future, all these new like very young players.
Yep.
And it's actually a little bit deceptive. All of those players have actually been playing StarCraft 2 since at least 2011 or 2012. Antis, his first recorded competitive match in StarCraft is all from 2018. He started playing, it looks like, competitively this year. So he is actually, I think, one of the best, if he is able to do really well here and make it to the playoffs, that's actually probably one of the best examples of a player saying, you know what, I may not have been playing for 7 years like all these other folks, but I can still actually get to that competitive level.
See, I didn't think that's where you were going, but that is a very good point. I thought where you were going was that we usually hear about the players that actually make a splash in Challenger, right? Like, we kind of like, we're like, Future gets talked up because of the interview here and there. We hear especially Fear Dragon hears about this NA guy that does well in ladder heroes or what have you, right? And kind of builds him up. But then this Antis guy, He had some things to say about him, but usually, I mean, it kind of like swept under the rug, like, it's all snow from
He's
here.
under my radar for sure.
Yeah, now I think he's on a lot of people's radar, and if he actually takes out Silky 2-0, that would be really impressive. And maybe Silky's having a bad day, and we're overhyping this guy for getting, you know, a lucky group and blah blah blah.
But even like, just making it to this point where he qualified over really pretty honestly good strong players for North America, like that is already an impressive result. Making it to this point was impressive for Antis, I think.
Right. Agreed. But Silky is not out of it yet, and this is the time where he proves that his mental state is worthy of his results of last season. If he can bring it back from being in a deficit, kind of just, I really feel like that last game was him getting too involved in his own mind games.
I could definitely see that.
I think he plays a typical Roach game, just maxed out on Roaches first and foremost, plays a little bit safer. I think he'll be fine.
Yep. Nice snipe on that Overlord, by the way, and we end up seeing that Antis is playing a little bit more conservatively with his own queens. So not going to be going for those Overlord snipes, just trying to secure that third base and play it out safe. But we got 16 lings on the way for Silky, 16 drones on the way for Antis, and not quite 16, but a lot more drones instead of lings.
I'll be impressed by 16 drones.
It's like, wow, how did you get double the larva of
That
me?
doesn't make any sense. No, but this is, I said, you know, playing a Roach game, that's, you know, that's where Silky can come back and play a normal game. Well, this is also kind of a normal way to play, but a bit more testing around the Ling Baneling. Can Antis show off some good Baneling skills? Is the health on his hatchery already halfway down there? That could actually be sniped.
One of these Banelings already taken out, and there's the other one. He does get a 2-for-1 trade there, but Silky still has one of those had one of those Banelings left over. Accidentally used it.
Whoa, there's no Banelings for Antis quite yet.
They're about to finish up though. Silky, you're playing with fire here.
Oh, okay, he gets both the queens and saves like a little less than half of his lings.
Oh my god, he has 2 lings stuck into the main base. Does Antis? No, Antis is looking for it, yes.
Nicely done. Okay, so, I mean, that was fair though, right? Because, of course, he got the third hatchery, so that was more than fair. That was really nice by Silky, but then he gets 2 queens for leftover lings, even saves a couple as they all ran around and went back out. Like, that is a good start for Silky, and Antis has the tough call. Does he try and do something in return with less larva, with less lings? I don't think he really can. So he just has to kind of, you know, accept the fact that he doesn't have a third base anymore. I guess he has these, but like, what are they really gonna do?
Yeah, there's a handful of Banelings out, and maybe he does manage to stack a drone. Hey, that's not at least some bad damage. That's pretty decent.
It's all right. It's all right. It's gonna be such a tough position. I've seen games where the Zerg player ends up just like kind of like brushing it off and not looking the worse for wear because you're still around like maybe more of a, you're both at 30 workers for instance, and you kind of stay around that point when you continue to trade lings, and you know that can be like, okay, no big deal, I lost my third. But this, I mean, he didn't really force Silky to not drone. As you see, more drones on the way for Silky. He's ahead 10 already. So this is a situation where I feel like, yeah, that third base dying really does hurt.
Yeah, and Silky already has a Roachborn finished up, whereas Antis is just now getting his own up. The +1 missile attack upgrades are not far behind for Silky either, so it's hard to find the real edges here for Antis. He's sitting down in workers. His Roach count is going to be lower. His upgrade is negligibly ahead. It's really looking like a great game for Silky.
The Spire is the way to come back in it, I suppose. You do go for the +1, you do go for Roaches, but then ultimately you try and stop them from scouting the Spire. 8 mutas might not do a lot of direct damage, but they might be able to pin your opponent back enough that you're able to recoup his losses, which it's possible. It's certainly things we've seen happen before. I think you named the 2 greatest like comeback mechanics. So actually, I guess Lurkers are kind of a comeback unit, right? But I'm thinking like Ling run bys and surprise mutas. That can get you back into a game. And Antis is, I think he's putting a lot in the Spire, which is going to be scouted.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of the things that you look at Silky and his overlords, or his queens, I should say. He was the one being aggressive with his queens, taking out some of those overlords. Silky still has all of his overlords on his opponent's side of the map. It's very quick and easy for him to get that scout on the Spire. He sees it, and now he knows, okay, I just have to be prepared for this. And if I want to go for an attack, I have to think about doing it very, very soon. But I even like the idea that he's just going for the Hydra because he doesn't know how far along the Spire was. For him, it could have been seconds away from finishing, or it could have actually just been a good bit away from finishing.
All right, so, I mean, this was maybe his only option, as he wasn't quite ready to move across the map with his Roaches, sure. But this does still mean that, like, if Antis can really impress with his muted control here, And obviously, I'm not talking about like microing each individual Muta. I'm more talking about finding those holes in the defenses of Silky. If he can impress us in that way, then these Mutas can buy enough time. I mean, with the way that he's recovered after the third base went down, he caught up in workers a little bit, like at least at a decent kind of 55. I think he needs. It's not an insane comeback, right? He just needs maybe a minute there, a minute here, 10 more drones, faster, like something along those lines, and he could be back in it. And the Mutas might be able to do that, even though Silky seems so well prepared for it. But it's all big, big, big mites. I think that Silky still is in a very good position.
No, but I agree. And even just doing things like he's doing right now, where he only gets 5 Mutas and then just tries to force out Spore Callers at every base, picking off some of the free Overlords out of the map. I mean, these small little things that are those little advantages that can add up are nice. And hey, even just forcing out a lot of these Hydras, maybe Silky doesn't have quite enough Roaches, doesn't have that frontline buffer during the engagement. These things can play out into longer term advantages.
And he's also going for a different composition, obviously his Mutas, but also Banelings. So, you know, Silky, I don't think he's going to get fed up because it's not really a lot of Mutas, but eventually he's going to think, okay, I've got a good enough army, I'm almost maxed out, I have Lurkers perhaps as well, I'm going to move out across the map. And if Antis can catch a good surround or the Lurkers unburrowed, then the Baneling style, I mean, that's a big resource dump into Banelings, but they can take surprisingly like amazing comeback battles, and that's what he's hoping for. And I'm on the hype train. Banelings are always fun to watch.
Well, Roaches are going to find in a very vulnerable mineral line over here. Silky is going to start pulling them away, but he's also trying to deal with Roaches on the other side of the map. The problem is the split is not quite perfect enough. He's starting to get some of those units over to this side and this base. Looks like he was able to get some of his own counter damage on with some drone or some of his own Roaches on the other side of the map, though.
Yeah, Antis is not working with a very large army, so he's that army of Silky we're watching right now probably could have just ran into the natural the third, but he does just instead leave, so only 8 drones die. Antis is still getting to that different army composition. He just finished up close to 20 Banelings, I think, but that's. I was thinking more like 40, to be honest.
27 Banelings, so not bad.
Yeah, it's again, if everything's plumped up, you know, then that's amazing, but.
It's going to be a lot about the engagement angles, and Lost and Found is a map with a lot of twists and turns and a lot of ways to try and flank your opponent if they get caught a little too far out for that engagement.
There's not a lot of overhead coverage because of the Mutas, so you know this is where the Banelings could maybe get that flanking maneuver or just a good old-fashioned surround. So I don't know about being aggressive though.
Oh my God! Please don't run the Baneling straight into the Lurkers.
Right? Yeah. They're just coming kind of okay. Well, that was concerned.
Sees them now. All right, Banelings are actually getting rolled back, so he's going to try and run around with them. The Ravager's getting caught by a handful of these Roaches, though. Oh, but this is not going well for Antis so far.
As Banelings are kind of getting caught behind the Roaches. Obviously, they're off creep. They're about to find some creep, but also some other Banelings. They're going to roll right on past, go for the mineral line of the third base. No? Yes, they are.
Okay, splitting them up on both sides of the mineral line, guaranteeing some of that drone damage, but doesn't even get all of them. And at the same time, Silky has chased down all of those Ravagers, even a Baneling in the mix here. Yes, these Roaches for Silky will get cleaned up, but he killed off a decent chunk of his opponent's army there. He dealt with all the Banelings and pulled his opponent very far back.
Yeah, those Banelings weren't, I mean, even using them on the drones wasn't ideal, and they only got 11, so that really wasn't ideal.
He's still not even ahead on workers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's not great. But Silky, his army is definitely better. Eagle upgrades, but he's got the Lurkers and the Hydras here. Antis is going to continue having to buy time and finding some weaknesses, and we are going into a bit of a, nope, just kidding, there's Lurkers there.
And a decent chunk of them, too. It's not something you can easily just dive on with 7 or 8 or 10 Roaches. And Silky's already on the other side of the map. He did not hesitate at all when he saw that army kind of trying to threaten a counterattack. He just said, nope, I'm going for it. Kills off a hatchery, and now he's going to back up.
I wonder if Tunneling Claws would have been better. Those Banelings really weren't as impressive as they should have been. Well, a little bit of missed micro on both sides, really.
Yeah, both these players actually splitting up their army quite a bit, and Silky's going to be able to snag a couple of these Roaches on the retreat, but does lose quite a few of his own Roaches and some Hydras.
These army supplies really aren't so bad, but it is the army type. I guess if Silky loses all his Lurkers back at home. Antis needs to get that 4th base back up once he can find himself down a hatchery and still down in drones.
Going to be further down in drones.
Yep.
No defenses over here really to speak of. We got Drones are already starting to go down thanks to the melee attack from those roaches. Silky already finding some value there.
He's trying to find... He almost got the Hydras behind the army, but Silky continues to just lay his lurkers around at every base so that Antis cannot force some weird base trade.
You know, sometimes those lurkers are actually hard to notice. So I'm really afraid that if Silky gets those lurkers out far enough into the map or something, that Antis is not going to notice that the lurkers are hitting him.
And I wonder if Antis had gone for another type of... Because he's already done a couple of things that are a little bit desperate. The Spire, the Baneling composition. I wonder if he had gone for like an equally timed Hive here. He's managed to keep a maxed army versus a maxed army, right?
Yeah, blinding
even if his army's inferior. Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe like he has a Spire, right? Yeah. So you try and go to a greater Spire, surprise your opponent. They're not the best with Vipers available, but you know, something a little bit more of a surprise because he has bought a lot of time. Like he is playing a pretty damn good ZvZ.
He's actually catching quite a bit of Silky's army, killing off those lurkers, killing off a lot of this army. Silky's coming back with a lot of his roaches, but now half of his army has been taken out. Yes, Silky has a big counterattack on the other side of the map that's winning out, but in terms of how these armies trade out, I actually like Antis' army better.
Yeah, exactly. And Silky, I mean, he has a ton of gas, but doesn't have a lot of minerals. He's having trouble actually dealing the same amount of damage, and did Antis finally find the weakness in Silky's defense despite initially placing his lurkers in the correct spot every single time?
Well, Silky does finally get out enough units over here to start pushing back a bit further. At the same time, we end up seeing that all the units on the other side of the map for Silky were cleaned up, so he's fallen down far more workers than Antis did.
Yeah.
But he did clean up a lot of the army. We're still down in army supply.
Yeah, exactly. Like when everything is said and done, even though he finally got kind of, you know, finally something arrived to deal with his Ravagers, he managed to save some of them. He still has an army supply lead and a worker lead. The upgrades are actually going to be in his favor very soon with +1 Carapace on the way. Silky has the lurker advantage, which can be huge, but they were finally found out of position, and that's when he took really big losses.
Oh man, now the 5th base, gonna find a handful of these roaches. Oh, gonna start picking them off. Silky in a lot of trouble right now. These roaches do move over there, but at the same time, we got Antis getting ready to move forward. And remember, a lot of those lurkers were taken out. There's only 3 left over from, I think, the 6 or 7 that were there before.
I mean, Silky has a 5th base in lurkers, so he's still in an okay position, but Antis is really proving how good he is at ZvZ. Maybe this isn't the fight that he really wants to take. He has the upgrade lead, but the lurker is adding a lot of damage here, and maybe go around the 5th base instead. No, he just grabs the lurker.
Oh, nice dodge out of there from the lurker of Silky. Lurker is actually still adding in quite a bit of DPS onto a handful of these roaches in the front line, but the Ravagers for Silky are getting taken out. The reinforcements for Antis are moving forward, and Antis is now sitting at a whopping 40 supply lead, taking out one of those bases for Silky. Remember, he was already up 1-0. He just needs one more W to make it to that decider match.
Silky was in a great place. He definitely had an imbalance of gas to minerals, so it was a GG. Wow. All right, Antis takes the 2-0. Definitely unexpected just as a score, but as that game was going, I mean, huge props to Antis. I think you know, you now look at this series versus Neeb and you're like, oh, I was just facing Neeb, right? That was just like, oh god, it's Neeb, right? But that ZvZ, that was good. That was solid.
That was really. I want to especially highlight the first ZvZ, because the first ZvZ was what really impressed me about Antis, where Silky was doing all of you're calling them all the little tests, where he was poking forward, he was being aggressive with some lings and banelings, and all the way up until like the 4-base economy situation before Silky tried to do the kind of funky, like, oh, I'm going to go for mutas, haha, like, and then cancel it and go into like lurkers. It's like, even before all of that, Antis was more than just keeping up with everything Silky was throwing at him. That is really the sign of a good Zerg player that can make it through all of those tests.
That was really nicely done. Really nice game number 2. And I would be scared if I was Starkiller, because not only are you facing Neeb, who everyone expects you to lose to, sorry, that's the truth, but now you got to face Antis, who did take you out before. We already talked about that, but then now looking very, very good as he takes out Silky 2-0.
All right, but before that, Neeb still going to be facing off versus Starkiller. We'll find out who Antis is going to face off against in that decider match and who is going to make it out number 1 in Group A.